All right, we'll go ahead and get started here soon. Again, just checking in, seeing how everyone's doing. Feel free to check in the chat. All right, everyone, so we'll go ahead and get started on time. Before I hand it off to Porter, I just want to do a couple of quick announcements on what to expect for the next couple of weeks. So this week and next week are student presentations. So Porter's the only one who's presenting today. The presentation will probably be around 20 minutes. Because of that, we do have time to ask more questions if you're interested. Porter, you don't have access to the questions in the chat, so I'll keep an eye on those if any do pop up. And then what I would like to do, and you guys don't have to stick around for this, but if you have any questions related to like how to find undergraduate research experiences or perspectives on undergraduate research experiences, we can have some of those more casual, informal conversations after Porter's presentation. So be very informal, but I will hang out if you want to. If no one's hanging out, then we'll go ahead and end the meeting. But if you have any questions specifically on like, hey, this seems really cool, like Porter's doing research, how do I get involved into a research experience at UVU? We can have more of those conversations and I can help guide you all if you have any of those questions. What you'll notice is that Thanksgiving break, we have nothing going on during Thanksgiving break. You might have gotten a couple of notifications for canceled meetings for this course. And so that was because I had a scheduled meeting for this course during Thanksgiving break. So I canceled that one and the following weeks. Starting on week 14, so coming back from Thanksgiving break, this course transitions to 100% asynchronous online course where there will be no more live stream presentations. So you don't need to tune in past Thanksgiving break to these Wednesdays, 12 p.m. live stream sessions. Instead, you guys can click any sort of webinar of your choosing. So research, an area of research that you're interested in. I do have a list of video recommendations, and then you'll post a discussion on those webinars. So you have 2 of those that are happening after Thanksgiving break. Feel free to work ahead. So if you would like to submit both of those webinar discussions before finals, feel free to do so. And again, there's 2 discussions that will be due before Friday. We also have a post-course survey that is the link for that has not been updated yet, but it will be after Thanksgiving break. Then you'll notice for finals week, we do not have an in-class final, so there's nothing that you have to log in for. What you do need to do is complete a post-course reflection that's due Monday. And then if you are interested, there's an extra credit SRI assignment that the instructions are listed in there, but it's essentially if 70% or more of the class fills out these SRIs, in which I know, so you don't have to send me any sort of confirmation that you completed the SRI, then everyone will get extra credit. If we're below 70%, then no one will get extra credit. So it's kind of like herd immunity going on right here. So if we get more than 70% of the course fills out these SRIs, then everyone will get extra credit. If we're below 70%, then no one will get extra credit. And if you have any questions on those assignments, please let me know, but all the instructions should be updated and good to go. If there are any technical difficulties or anything's not clear, again, please let me know. All right, so that's all that I have for assignments on my side. Go ahead and stop sharing. And so, as I mentioned before, we have student presenters that are going for the next couple of weeks. Porter in particular has been in my lab now for about 2 years. Porter, I think you joined like a couple springs ago. And so Porter is an STEM student, which he might tell you a little bit more about in his presentation. And he has funding to do research in my lab, and he did lab rotations and decided to join into my research group, and has really brought like his own personal experiences into his undergraduate research goals. And he'll tell you more about that. But having Porter come in with his background experiences has really enriched the research process on my side of things. So Really excited for Porter to be presenting on some of the work that he's been doing that's been inspired by his passion, led by him, and then we're just kind of here to help him complete his research. So with that, Porter, I think I'll go ahead and hand it over to you. And again, I'll keep track of any sort of questions that are happening in the chat.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I guess that this proves be careful who you do research with, because you might be asked to give a presentation to 120 students. But I'm excited to be here today and excited to talk a little bit about my experience as an undergraduate researcher here at UVU. So like Britt mentioned, I am Porter Bischoff. I work with her and Dr. Josh Primo, and we are looking at how medical experiences influence science motivation overall. Can you guys see my screen? Is it sharing the right thing or no?
It looks like it might be showing like the presenter mode.
That's cool. Let me try one more time. Okay, how about that? Is that better?
Yeah, that looks good.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. So I just want to start with my history, a little bit about how I got here. So first off, I need to start with this bottom picture. That's not real. That's a Halloween costume. If you're queasy, I guess I should have gave you a little bit of a warning, but it's all makeup. But anyway, my story, I have had a ton of medical experiences throughout my life. When I was 2, I fell off a stage, landed on my feet, and all the bones in my left ear exploded. So I can't hear a thing out of my left ear. I'm completely deaf. A couple years later, when I was 11, found out that I was type 1 diabetic, and that was a complete shock. Nobody in my family had diabetes. They said, at the time at least, the statistics were that 90% of type 1 diabetes was genetic and 10% was random. And sure enough, I was a lucky 10%. And anyway, so that is right there, that picture of me on the football field. That was about the time I got diabetes. It was right before my first year playing football, and my mom was a mess. It was really stressful for her, but it was a fun time. About 3 months after that, I fell up the stairs and ruptured my spleen. The corner of the step went underneath my rib cage and cut my spleen open and required me to get life flighted to Primary Children's. It was insane. There was like an 80% chance of dying, but I'm here, which is a blessing. But anyway, 2 years after that, my gallbladder failed, which is this top picture. And 2 years after that, my appendix failed, which I'm recovering from in this picture here on the left. So this is just, I'm a mess. That's ultimately what I want to get across, is that my medical history has been intense. So from a very young age, I knew that I probably wanted to go into the medical field. So got to UVU, planning on going into medicine, and just like I'm sure the rest, similar to a lot of you, I figured, well, got to go into biology, got to get that taken care of, and got into biology and realized, holy cow, I kind of love being a scientist. The science aspect really interests me, where before I saw science as a means to an end where it could get me to my medical career, but instead seeing how medicine is so involved, or science is so involved in medicine, was really beneficial for me and really changed my outlook. So that's what kind of encouraged this research project. Was, I'm sure there are more people like me. Medical experiences are not random. A lot of people do have medical experiences, and in those that have medical experiences, lots of people do have those chronic conditions that are long lasting, like diabetes. But obviously, it's a major motivation for what career or majors they might go into. And if we can help the Porter Bischoffs in the world, when I was 11, if my doctors talked more about the science that's going on, maybe I would have realized sooner that I had an interest in science. And if that was the case, where would I be now, or what would my career trajectory be? I feel foolish that my science education started 2 years ago or 3 years ago or whatever it was, when I was sitting in 1610 and made that connection, where I think that things could have been a lot different if I realized that passion I had a lot earlier. So anyway, I came to Britt and Josh's lab and wanted to see if there were more people like me. Of course, the big dream at the beginning was getting into a wet lab and running clinical trials would be awesome, but we don't do that at UVU. But COVID happened, so unfortunately, but also very fortunately, I found a niche with Josh and Britt that has really helped me grow as a student, where we're able to do. It was like 2 months ago that I met Britt for the first time in person. Like, we've been able to successfully do our research totally virtually, which has been a blessing for me as well as for everyone else. But there are some people in groups that I work with that the pandemic really messed up their research project progress, but it didn't really mess ours up, which was a blessing. But anyway, so the ultimate goal here was to figure out, does having medical conditions influence your interest in going into science? And if that's the case, in what aspects and how can we capitalize on that? And ultimately, an end goal I'd like to have is to go to those hospital settings and have handouts for the patients that are in the hospitals and say, hey, this is how an x-ray works. Isn't that awesome? That's how we see your bones or whatever it may be. So I'll talk about next steps coming up. But as for previous research, one thing that's unique about this research project is that there are so many different iterations that we could have taken. At each conference I presented at, it feels like I presented on a different focus because we have such a large data set, which has been really cool. So this is kind of our latest iteration. The next one will probably change a lot, and it's really exciting just to see all the different things that we've studied so far. So as for this particular focus, this part of this project, we're looking into how connection in the science community is tied, why that's important. And obviously this paper by Estrada shows that it is important, and that students who feel more connected to the scientific community are more likely to succeed in science. And these can be influenced by different things, whether that be connection to the STEM community, their science engagement, or their identity and their science engagement. Now, what we hypothesize would be, one more last thing in this previous research is that medical experiences and chronic conditions have not been tied to science. As far as we can tell, through many, many hours of literature review, there's not anybody that is focused particularly on medical to science. There's a lot of focuses on medical experiences to medical interests, or a lot of experiences with science experiences to science interests, but nothing from medical to science as far as we can tell, especially regarding motivation. So it's been really interesting, kind of doing something that no one else has done yet, which is really exciting. But lastly, we just want to point out that medical conditions often lead to greater disconnection from others and those that have those experiences can have higher levels of stress in their life. That's been supported by past research as well. So this got us to this point where we're like, okay, being connected is important in science. Those that have medical conditions feel a lack of connection. Can we marry the two? Can we see a correlation there, especially at UVU, where UVU is such a unique school, as we're an open enrollment institution, a teaching institution, and a commuter campus. We've got so many unique opportunities here that most other prior research has not looked into regarding our specific demographic. So we focused on how medical experiences can interrupt people's lives. Diabetes, my blood sugar goes low, I've got to leave my science class, and therefore I'll be less connected to my science classes. Which has been tough in the past. That was one thing that we talked in length about, and ultimately this led to our hypothesis of how medical experiences and chronic conditions can be related to varying levels of student science career motivation, self-interest, science self-determination, engagement in science outside the classroom, the communal view of science, and value appears in the classroom, which is a mess. So ultimately, stepping back, we sent out a survey at the beginning of this last semester. We've had surveys every semester since we started researching, just about, and the pre-course survey we had, I'm sure many of you took as Britt was the teacher of your class, but we had 1,280 students that responded to this across 14 different biology courses, including those that are non-major specific, and 16 different professors. So we looked into these individual aspects, and I'm not going to go into in depth about each of these because first off, they're kind of esoteric and you guys have seen them before. And second off, you may not care, and that's okay, but this is what's led to what we have understood. So for career motivation, for example, these are a couple of examples of what those questions would be on that survey. So learning science would help me get a good job, or understanding science will help benefit me in my career. One thing to be said is if you guys would like a copy of this later, more than happy to give it to you. But we won't go into the nitty gritty of it because I don't think that it is that meaningful regarding what the particular questions were. As for results, we found that 55% of students have had an acute medical experience. That should say experience. I'm sorry, not condition right there. 699 students. So however they report, whatever medical experience means, which has been really hard to identify, 55% of students say that they've had that. As well as in this survey, 20% of students have reported having a chronic condition. So 250-ish students that, again, identified that what they go through is a chronic thing. And we just left it kind of broad so that way people could self-identify, and also would give us the means later to look into what qualifies a medical experience versus a chronic condition or whatever that may be, which has been really cool. But as we saw so far, in men, we found that 51% report having medical experiences. So here, the dark one is the one that reports having the experience of the chronic condition. And 15% report having chronic conditions, which is interesting. I mean, not much we can do with it now until we compare later on and also compare to what's going on in previous research. But this shows that a lot of people have medical experiences. This is something that affects more than half this very broad reaching population. As for women, we find that 58% have medical experiences or have had them, and 24% have reported having chronic conditions. And as for those that are non-binary or choose not to identify, 72% report having medical experiences and 61% report having chronic conditions. So very interesting stuff. Very interesting, letting us know what the makeup of our students are. And I think that this could be really useful for professors to see what their students are going through, what experiences they may be having, or what they bring to the classroom. What I learned here was there is the possibility that there's another Porter Bischoff out in the UVU crowd. I mean, my experiences are not solo, and there are people that have had similar experiences to me. And gosh, that creates a sense of community and makes you feel more connected overall. But further results that we found, we did see significant differences for students with chronic medical conditions, depending on their major, which we will go into a little bit further as this project keeps going. This is just from initial abstract level type of research, but we're excited to break down like those that are going into biology or non-biology, pre-health, whatever it may be. And we also found that non-STEM majors had more appreciation and engagement with STEM if they also had a chronic medical condition, which again kind of plays back into my original narrative that I learned that I love medicine because medicine saved my life. And this might be the same with those that are non-STEM majors. Our next steps, we want to keep looking into what is going on with underrepresented students, particularly those that may be non-binary or those that are somewhere on the autism spectrum or LGBTQ. These are all aspects that we're looking into, as well as we want to, this is a little bit of a, a little bit of a spoiler for you guys, but there will be a post survey, and I hope that you all will take it and will take it well. And we want to ultimately, from this particular iteration of this project, is to help understand the inclusivity of teaching for those with medical experiences. That ultimately this affects so many people have these challenges more than we could have thought, more than is predicted. And gosh, we need to make sure that we are given the best option for them to succeed in educationally. So we are signed up for UCUR, the Utah Council on Undergraduate Research, to present there, and waiting on an abstract to hear back, but excited and hopeful that we can teach what we've learned there, as well as help educate educators. We'd like to go to NCUR, the National Council of Undergraduate Research, again, as it's focused on undergraduate research, which is so important, as well as there'll be a lot of educators there that we could teach what these latest findings are. And then SABRE, I can't remember exactly what the thing is. This is where I might have to turn to Britt, but essentially it's just studying how biology education is being taken care of, a conference for biology education. So obviously plays right into my role of helping teachers, educators understand what's going on and how we can better help students. And lastly, really exciting, We've talked about it for 2 years now, but we finally have enough data that we could start writing a paper, which pray for us, or good thoughts or good wishes or whatever it may be, but that's going to be a challenge, and a challenge I'm excited for, but definitely a challenge. Next, this is all, maybe this really interested you, and if that's the case, awesome. But if not, I understand. Like, research is such a specific thing that you either fall in love with your section, and like, I feel like I know a lot more about science education than I do about microbiology. And a lot of microbiology research, for example, may be boring to me or whatever it may be. So I just wanted to talk about some of the great impacts that research has had on me as an undergrad student. First off, the statistical analysis that we ran in this project has helped me so much. I think that regardless of what your field is, regardless where you're going, seriously, even outside of STEM, outside of science, whatever it may be, I think statistical analysis and machine learning and everything like that is where we're going. And these are important skills to have. And in this lab, I learned some of those skills and learned that I do have a passion for those, and that I want to keep growing my skill set for that, because I think it'll be so important. I talked a little bit about COVID, and that required me to learn a lot about the statistical analysis on my own on the back end, or take extra classes that helped me in my research. But we get a lot of the wet lab experience here at UVU, going through all of our lab courses and everything, as well as there's a lot of wet lab research. And this was a great experience for me to broaden my horizons, but also still apply the scientific method, which ultimately is what grad schools are looking for, or med schools, just that you do apply that scientific thinking. I've had a lot of opportunities to present at UCUR last year, the UVU showcase last year. This last summer, I went to ASMQ, a microbiology conference for undergraduate educators, and we were able to talk about particularly COVID, dealing with medical conditions. That was another iteration of this project. And there, as far as I know, I was one of the few undergraduates, which was really exciting. As I was presenting, teachers said, "So where do you teach?" And I said, "Well, I don't." And they're like, "Holy cow, that's crazy. Where do you go again?" And I was able to bring a little bit more knowledge, or a little more light on UVU, as well as there's been awesome opportunities to get funding. We just found out I got the ERSCA grant. We applied for that and it worked out, which is super exciting. So other students in our research group are able to get hourly wages. So that way everything can get taken care of, because being a student is tough. As well as Britt talked about the STEM scholarship. I know they just went through their last round of funding, but hopeful that they will reapply. This came from the National Science Foundation, and it's a wonderful opportunity. If you're a senior, unfortunately, it looks like it may not happen in the time set, but if you are an lower classman, please apply. Look at the STEM scholarship, or reach out to Britt, or reach out to me, or I even saw on your roster, there's a lot of STEM students that are in the class right now. So learn about it. It's been a super cool opportunity that's allowed me to have school paid for while I do research, while I learn about a new passion that I have. Lastly, I want to talk about Station 1. That was an amazing opportunity last summer that I think is directly tied to my research experience. It was oh shoot, gosh, my mind just went blank. I'm sorry. It was a summer experience with MIT and Harvard professionals and professors that we went over how stem cells work, which was the coolest thing ever. I got partnered with a company out in Boston, and it was all virtual because of COVID, but it gave me the opportunity to see biotech in motion and to see what research looks like, as well as learning from the leaders in the field and the leaders in the world. And UVU actually has a partnership with this fellowship. That's the word I was looking for earlier. So apply for this fellowship. It gives you a nice little stipend for the summer, but more importantly, it opened the doors to so many things. It opened the doors to the job I currently have on campus. I don't think that I would have got it without having that experience in Station 1. I think that it'll be very vital for med school, very vital for grad school. I think that you ought to look into it. So come find me, man. I'm happy to meet with any of you guys about Station 1. The applications I think they're due sometime in the middle of January. So there's still a little bit of time, but it's a wonderful opportunity to get funded to get research experiences, as well as to see the grand scheme of things, to learn from amazing professionals, And lastly, there's 4 spots out of 30 that are automatically given to UVU students, which is the coolest thing. So your odds are pretty good. Lastly, join us if you'd like. We will take anybody for 5 minutes or for 3 years in our research group. This just has our emails, me, Josh, and Britt's emails. And we're always looking for new people, always looking to help anybody learn about research. And it's totally changed my undergraduate experience and totally helped me become better prepared for graduate studies later on. And yeah, so if you're out of research opportunities for med school and you apply in 5 minutes, come hang out with us. We'll get you some hours. We could use some help writing a paper, and that would be awesome if we could get you on that or whatever it may be. We got a lot of opportunities in our lab group, and we're looking at more things than just science motivation. But yeah, if you're interested, come find us. But yeah, that's what I got today. I'm happy to take any questions if anyone has anything, or if not, I understand that too, whatever it may be.
Thanks, Porter. And you actually do have a couple of questions.
Sweet.
The first one here we have, asking, have you considered publishing your research and future paper with the Journal of Student Leadership here on campus? And so actually, I don't think we have talked about that at all.
We have now. So
yeah,
we'll
that will
look
be
into it
added.
now.
That will be
Yes.
added to our list of things to discuss. So thank you, Jacob, for kind of highlighting an additional opportunity for like Porter to kind of present and highlight his research on that. We got a really good question from Catherine in the chat here, asking if do you think would we predict to see a difference in motivation between those with a generally positive medical experience or medical experiences and those with generally negative ones?
Yeah, so I think, and obviously Britt, hop in whenever you'd like, but I think in prior research, what we found is it's not necessarily a high correlation, not a great R-squared value, but those that have had negative experiences are more likely not to go into the STEM fields. So that could possibly be what we found, where having a positive experience makes you want to be a doctor, or having a negative experience could make you want to be a doctor as well. But there's been studies of how having really bad medical experiences has led you to go as far away from medicine and science as you can.
Yeah, and and the reason why this is a good question is because we've actually had discussions about this in as we're going through the pre-survey data. As you can tell, it's because there's limited research that's looking at medical experiences or chronic conditions of students and how it might influence their STEM motivation. We're left with like this really brand new area, which is fantastic to contribute to. However, it can be really hard to interpret that data because we don't necessarily have a framework to base it off of. So when we're getting these results back and we're seeing significant differences between our majors, especially for our non-STEM majors, we're like, how do we interpret this information? How do we use it and actually like use this information in the future to inform instructors or students? And so that's what we're struggling with the most. And I think maybe adding something into the survey, in addition to like, have you had experience with medical conditions or like I don't know exactly how we frame it on the survey, but it's catching like that acute medical experience versus the chronic one. And then in particular, following up with it on like, has it been a positive or negative experience, could really maybe parse out some of that information that we are actually missing. So that's a really good point. And I think that's an awesome question and something to look at.
Yeah, one of the things, I mean, always have great pie in the sky ideas, right, for research, but we talked about potentially doing focus groups, and that's something that we've talked about including in the focus groups, is seeing the sentiment regarding the medical experiences.
Yeah, because I think what we're struggling with right here is capturing the complexity of all of these conditions, as like Porter was mentioning, like his experience is unique, but yet at the same time, we're looking at almost 50 to over 50% of our student population having some sort of medical experience. And then a fairly large chunk, anywhere between like 15 to 20% are dealing with chronic conditions. Like that is a huge chunk of our student population. That is a lot of students who are being impacted by these things. And so because we only have like 2 questions on our survey that are dedicated to this, there's this additional richness that we're missing, and also a more personalized experience from students that we're missing. And I think those focus groups and interviews can probably really help with that. All right, a couple other questions here. How do you collect your data from the surveys, and how do you process that data?
Yeah, so obviously the data is run through Qualtrics. That's how we send out the survey. And then I've got a little bit of training in R with the classes that I've taken, so I've done my own like side stuff with that. But for the research group, we do SPSS and learning how to do that. So if you want to learn about R or SPSS, this is the place to come if you're at all interested.
Yeah, we have the other mentors part of the iSpy research group. Josh Primo is the expert on doing survey analysis and development of surveys. So we kind of rely very heavily on him for that expertise for statistical analysis. And then my side of things would be like if Porter did decide to go in the direction of focus groups and interviews, I focus on like the qualitative side of biology education research. All right, Rebecca is asking in the chat here, how do you think you could apply this research to how we can teach STEM to students? So looking at like this larger implication for teaching.
Yeah, first off, I think very simply, so many people have, like Britt just mentioned, so many people have medical experiences that we need to be mindful of it. And I think as well, we've noticed in some of our science classes where though our professors are not necessarily in the medical field, using medical experiences have helped make connections outside of like cell biology. We just learned about insulin, and that was one of our case studies. And I went, man, I take insulin, so this is awesome. I have a very specific interaction. But I think ultimately, so my goal with the ERSCA funding is to get a group together to go to Intermountain Healthcare, go to Primary Children's, and have like a conference, a walkthrough, but where we can teach some of those patients about what the science is, so that way they can make that connection sooner. But ultimately, just open your eyes, open educators' eyes, so that way they can see that, oh, this is something we had not considered before, and then hopefully they come up with the different innovations, and maybe this could be a future iteration of our project. So.
Yeah, and I think from like the instructor side of things, I think it provides a good perspective of inclusive teaching in particular. So like flexibility of assignments, due dates, like that allows for everyone to maintain those due dates in their calendar. But then if you are, struggling with a chronic medical condition, for me as an instructor, knowing that like 20% of my students might be going through this, I mean, I'm not getting that many students contacting me about it. So therefore, there's probably a lot of students who are struggling with this but don't feel comfortable talking to me about it. So looking at like different types of strategy in which we can maintain like equity within the classroom, especially surrounding this type of demographic or experience that individuals are having, is just like it's just an unknown area. And so what does that support for students look like moving forward? A couple other questions in here. And then Jacob also provided some links in here for our the student leadership stuff. So we'll have to pull that out later, Porter, and take a look at that. And then also as part of your research, have you surveyed professionals in the medical and STEM fields on how they got into their profession?
We've not. What we've done so far is relied on past literature, but definitely interested. I mean, I'm only going to be at UVU for so long, but there's a lot of good ideas that I'd love to implement.
Yeah, definitely an area for more literature searching into that, as well as I think like if we do have more students joining in on the research project, it could be an area to follow up on. And then another question, where are the surveys being sent? Is it mostly here in Utah, or are there other places that they're being taken?
But right now it's strictly UVU, and that's to highlight the kind of on purpose, but also because of convenience. But UVU is so unique is what we're learning, and being able to just that fact that we're open enrollment is insane outside of our community. So that's why we're focusing on UVU strictly right now.
Yeah, and I think it's always been a goal to try to expand out to other institutions because I'm predicting we'll probably see different results depending on the institution that we would also survey. But yeah, right now we have so much information just looking at UVU that it's been we've got our hands full.
Yeah, we've got, so between like all of the survey stuff, including this semester, like 6,000 entry points. It's crazy. I don't
We
know.
got
There's a lot of research to do. Again, there's my plug. So
And then last one from Kevin just saying like, oh, that sounds pretty cool. Kevin, just go ahead and send me an email and I'll make sure to CC Porter, Josh, and everyone else as part of the research group on it if you're interested in this project in particular.
yeah, Brit fights for you to get funding. So if you need some money, like come research with us. That's all
We
I got.
try. Porter, that's all been on you, man. You've been the one that's been submitting stuff left and right. So that's your hard work. All right, everyone. So those are the questions in the chat here. Now I think is just kind of the time if you wanted to stay on for a more casual conversation on how to find undergraduate research experiences. I'm here to hang out for, 15 minutes or so. Porter, feel free to hang out if you want to contribute to that conversation, but I think your presentation kind of covered a lot of these different aspects. So for everyone else, feel free to head on out. If not, I will stay on to answer any questions that you have either about the course or how to find research experiences. And we have a lot of thank yous in the chat too, so. And thanks everyone. I hope you guys have a good rest of your day. Cool, thanks Porter. That was an awesome presentation. We're getting closer to the end of our participants, but I don't.
I just sent this to you. I know I've sent it to you before, but this has helped me a lot. It's just like a list of what professors do what research on campus. So
Yeah, I'll go ahead and I can maybe like post that in
sure.
the course thing.
Yeah, it's a little bit outdated, but I think that it at least gives you a vibe for what's going on out there.
Yeah, I know we're looking at trying to update this a little bit more within at least the biology department.
Yeah.
And again, if does anyone have any questions on anything? If not, I'll probably end the meeting then. I don't see any hands raised. I don't see anything else in the chat. If anyone like to unmute and ask a question, feel free to do so. You can always send me an email later on too. Yeah, so Nathan's asking in the chat, there's a list of research opportunities. So I'll go ahead and post that in the an announcement of I'll try to see if I can find an updated list too of like faculty members who are doing research within the biology department and if they're accepting students and what type of research they're doing. And I'm always happy to meet with students to kind of walk through like how should you contact a professor? What are some things that you should include in that initial email? So if anyone wants that information, just feel free to send me a email or a message on Microsoft Teams. All right. I think that's it then. I'll go ahead and end the meeting. Again, Porter, thanks so much for presenting today, and I will talk to everyone later.